So if you've been around this channel for a while, you already know how I feel about cartoon tropes. We did a whole video on 10 cartoon tropes that just need to die, gone, retired, put in a box, and buried. And honestly, that video hit. You guys responded, you left comments, you had opinions, and I loved it so much that I came back and made a second video where I literally just handed the mic to the comment section, cartoon fans, calling out their most hated tropes. It was chaos, good chaos. But here's the thing, after going through all of those comments, reading what you guys hate, what annoys you, what makes you want to throw your remote at the screen, I started noticing something else. People weren't just complaining. Some of you were saying, I wish we'd see more of this instead. And that got me thinking, because we spend so much time talking about what cartoons are doing wrong. The lazy writing, the recycled characters, the same villain revealed for the 5th time in a row. Like, we're not going to see it coming from a mile away. But what about the stuff that actually works? What about the tropes that show up once in a blue moon and make you sit up straight and go, wait, why don't they do this more often? That's what today's video is about. We're flipping the script. We're not here to complain today. Well, maybe a little, but mostly. We're here to talk about the cartoon tropes that are genuinely good, the ones that are underused, the ones that, when done right, hit completely different. Because your favorite cartoon villain trope, the big twist, the surprise betrayal, the character who seemed nice and then, boom, evil all along, that's not interesting anymore. That's just expected. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome to Animated Memories. And if you've been rocking with us since the first Tropes video, you already know what it is. Either way, kindly subscribe to Animated Memories for more content like this. It genuinely helps the channel more than you know. All right, let's talk about the tropes we actually need more of. Okay, first trope on the list. And I need you to really think about this one because I feel like we've been sleeping on it for years. Picture this, a rich girl. She's got the big house, the fancy clothes, the dad who gives her everything she wants. She walks into a room and everybody knows this girl has never been told no a day in her life. Now, what does your brain automatically tell you that character is going to be like? Exactly. Mean, selfish, the bully. The one who looks down on the main character and makes their life difficult just because she can. That's the default. That's what we've been trained to expect. And honestly, cartoons have been so consistent with this that it's basically a law at this point. Rich girl equals villain adjacent. And look, I get it. The spoiled brat works. It's easy conflict. It's easy to hate. You don't have to do much work to make the audience root against someone who throws money around and treats people like they're beneath her. But here's my problem with it. It's lazy. It is genuinely lazy writing. Because being rich doesn't automatically make you a bad person, and cartoons keep acting like it does. Every spoiled rich character is the same. Same attitude, same mean girl energy, same arc where they either stay terrible or get humbled in the most predictable way possible. And then Princess and the Frog came out and gave us Charlotte. And I need us to talk about Charlotte because she doesn't get nearly enough credit for what she actually is. On the surface, girl is spoiled. Like textbook spoiled. Her dad gives her everything. She grew up in a mansion in New Orleans, dreaming about princes and fairy tales, and she has never once had to worry about a single bill in her life. If you described her to someone who hadn't seen the movie, they would immediately assume she's the antagonist. But then you actually watch her, and Charlotte is one of the most genuinely kind characters Disney has ever written. Full stop. Think about what she actually does in this movie. She funds Tiana's restaurant. Not because she had to. Not because she wanted something in return. Because Tiana is her best friend and she wanted to see her win. She sees Tiana show up to her party looking like a mess. And before she even knows what happened, she grabs her, takes her inside, dresses her up in one of her own gowns and puts a tiara on her head. A tiara. Her tiara. That she was already wearing. She kissed a frog for her friend. Do you understand how much you have to love somebody to kiss a frog on the mouth? Because they asked you to? And this is the part that actually gets me. When Tiana ends up with the prince, Charlotte doesn't throw a fit. She doesn't turn bitter. She doesn't make it about herself. She just smiles and means it. Because she wanted Tiana to be happy more than she wanted the fairy tale ending for herself. That's not a spoiled brat. That's genuinely one of the best friends in any animated movie ever made. Now compare that to Princess from Powerpuff Girls, because that is what the spoiled rich girl trope usually looks like. She wants to be a Powerpuff Girl, she throws money at the problem, she acts entitled to everything, and when she doesn't get her way, she pitches a full fit. No depth, no growth, just pure brat energy from start to finish. And again, it works for what the show was doing, but it's the easy version, the default. Charlotte is the hard version, the interesting version, because you have to actually think about how a person who grew up with everything could still turn out to be genuinely good. And the answer Princess and the Frog gives you is good parents, a real friendship, and a heart that actually cares about other people. That's it. That's the whole thing. And it's so simple, but cartoons almost never do it. Now, Charlotte isn't the only example. If you watch Has Been Hotel, and if you haven't, just know it is not a kid's show. Proceed accordingly. But Charlie, the literal princess of hell, daughter of Lucifer himself, opened a rehabilitation hotel in hell because she genuinely believes everyone deserves a second chance. She's optimistic to a fault, she means well, sometimes to the point where it actually holds her back, but the sweetness never goes away. That's the spoiled sweet done in a completely different setting, and it still works. And then there's Rarity from My Little Pony. Now look, hear me out if you're not an MLP person, because Rarity is actually a perfect example of this done right. She is the prissy, ultra feminine, dramatically fainting on her fainting couch type of character. She loves beautiful things, she loves royalty, she loves looking good. In any other show, she would be the mean girl. But Rarity's defining trait is generosity. She doesn't just want nice things, she wants everyone to have nice things. She'll work herself to exhaustion making dresses for her friends and not complain once. That's the thing about the spoiled sweet trope done right. It's not about stripping the character of who they are. Charlotte didn't stop being a princess-obsessed romantic. Rarity didn't stop caring about fashion. Charlie didn't stop being optimistic to the point of being a little naive. The sweetness is the character. The kindness is genuine. It's not a lesson they had to learn. It's just who they are. And that's exactly why it hits harder than the spoiled brat ever could. Because you're not waiting for them to be humbled. You're not waiting for the lesson. You're just watching someone who grew up with everything choose to use it to make the people around them happy. And in a world where cartoons keep telling us that rich characters are either villains or one bad day away from becoming one, that's genuinely refreshing. We need more of it. Okay, so if you watched my video on cartoon tropes that need to die, and if you haven't, go watch it, the link is somewhere on screen, then you already know I had a lot to say about the dumb dad trope. You know the one. Dad is a complete buffoon. Can't cook, can't think, makes every situation worse just by existing. And then mom walks in, competent, exhausted, slightly disappointed in everyone around her, and saves the day, again, for the 100th time, while also somehow holding down a job, managing the household, raising the kids, and tolerating this man she apparently chose to marry. And I said what I said about that trope. It's tired. It's been tired. We've been watching the same dynamic since cartoon dads were invented, and at this point, it feels less like a character choice and more like a factory setting. But here's what I didn't get to talk about in that video. The solution isn't just make the dad smarter. No. We can do something way more interesting than that. What if both of them were idiots? Not mean idiots, not neglectful idiots, just lovably, chaotically, absolutely unqualified for parenthood, but somehow pulling it off idiots. Two people who probably should not be left unsupervised, but are somehow raising children and doing a decent job of it. Because that is funny. That is genuinely funny in a way that one smart parent and one dumb parent will never be. Let me give you the examples. Phineas and Ferb. Now, Linda and Lawrence are not the main characters, obviously, but think about how they're written. Lawrence is goofy. He's into obscure history. He gets excited about the most random things. He's clearly on his own wavelength at all times. And Linda is also kind of in her own world. She was a one-hit wonder pop star in the 80s. She has her own whole thing going on. Neither of them is the designated voice of reason. They're just two people living their lives while their kids build a roller coaster in the backyard. And the show doesn't make it a problem. It doesn't frame them as bad parents. They're actually warm and present and involved. They're just also a little oblivious. And that obliviousness is the joke. Not the dad being stupid while the mom sighs, just two people who are equally a lot, raising kids who are also a lot, and somehow it all works out. Then there's Bob and Linda from Bob's Burgers. And, okay, technically, Bob is slightly more the voice of reason between the two of them, I'll give you that. But the thing about Bob's Burgers is that it switches. Linda will have her unhinged musical theater moment, and Bob has to be the adult. And then Bob will get completely obsessed with something ridiculous. A turkey, a rival restaurant, a horse. And Linda is the one going, honey, maybe we should calm down a little. They take turns being the chaos. And that's what makes them feel like an actual couple instead of a trope. Real couples don't have a designated reasonable one. You take turns losing your mind. That's just marriage. And then there's Bluey. And I feel like Bluey deserves its own conversation entirely. But for the sake of this segment, Bandit and Chili are the gold standard of this done right. Bandit is absolutely unhinged. He is a full-grown adult man who will get on the floor and play make-believe for 45 minutes and be completely invested in it. He takes the games as seriously as the kids do, sometimes more seriously. But Chili is not just standing to the side, being responsible. She's in it too. She has her moments where she's the one being silly, the one who needs to be pulled back, the one learning something alongside her kids instead of just supervising from a distance. Both of them are messy. Both of them are trying. Both of them are funny. And the show is better for it. Now, I need to talk about Cosmo and Wanda, because this is actually a little heartbreaking if you know the history. People forget that in the early episodes of Fairly Odd Parents, like the actual pilot and early season 1, Cosmo and Wanda were written more as equals. Cosmo wasn't the full-blown bumbling idiot he became later. He was more naive, a little goofy, but there was something charming and almost suave about him, and Wanda matched his energy. They were two halves of a whole, equally silly in their own ways. It actually felt like a real dynamic between two people who balanced each other out. And then, somewhere along the way, the writers decided, you know what would be funnier? Make Cosmo a complete moron, and make Wanda the exhausted voice of reason who's constantly managing him. And just like that, bumbling husband, nagging wife. The exact same dynamic the show could have avoided. Cosmo's voice even changed, got higher, more grating. And what used to be an endearing goofball became the same joke repeated for 8 more seasons. It didn't have to be that way. That's the thing about this trope. When shows start with two equally chaotic parents and then slowly let one of them become the straight man to make jokes easier, they lose something. Because the funny version, the actually interesting version, is when nobody in the house has it fully together and they're all just figuring it out together. That's not a bad family. That's just a real one. And cartoons that understand that are always more fun to watch. Okay, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. When you first watched Princess and the Frog, the first time, before you knew how it ended, did you trust Charlotte, like genuinely trust her? Or were you sitting there watching this bubbly, over-the-top, gets everything she wants? Rich girl be incredibly nice to Tiana and thinking, okay, but when is she going to show her true colors? When is the mask coming off? What's the angle here? Nobody is just this nice. There has to be a catch, be honest. Because I was absolutely doing that. I was watching one of the most genuinely kind characters in any Disney movie ever made, and I was waiting for her to betray her best friend. The whole movie, I was waiting, and she never did. And when the credits rolled, I felt like a monster. But here's the thing, that's not entirely our fault, because Disney specifically, and animation in general, spent years training us to do exactly that. To look at the nice character and squint, to wait for the twist, to assume that sweetness is always a costume somebody is wearing over their actual evil self. Think about how many times we got that reveal. Frozen gave us Hans. Charming, attentive, perfect Prince Hans who was evil the whole time, and we didn't see it coming. And that was great the first time. People loved that twist. So then the machine kicked in, and suddenly every animated movie needed a version of that moment. The friendly character who turns. The ally who was playing you, the smile that was hiding something sinister underneath. Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Wreck-It Ralph. The twist villain became so common that it stopped being a twist. It became a checklist item. And once audiences caught on, and we caught on fast, it completely reversed on itself. Now we don't trust the kind characters. we assume the genuinely good ones are hiding something. We've been conditioned to treat warmth as a red flag, which means something really interesting happened. Actual genuine kindness became the subversion. Think about Perito from A Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. Little dog, happy, enthusiastic, loves everyone. Shows up in what is honestly one of the darker, more emotionally complex animated movies in recent years and just radiates pure goodness the entire time. And I know I wasn't the only one waiting for it. Waiting for the moment where Perito does something that recontextualizes everything, where the little happy dog turns out to be working for someone, where the innocence was a performance. It never happened. Perito was just good. Completely, entirely. No hidden agenda, good. And by the end of the movie, when that's been confirmed, when you realize this little dog just loved everyone around him with zero conditions and zero ulterior motives, it hits you harder than any villain reveal ever could. Because you spent the whole movie bracing for a betrayal that never came, and the relief of that. The emotional release of going, oh, he's just good. That's actually more powerful storytelling than the twist, because the twist gives you shock, but this gives you something warmer than that. It gives you the feeling of being wrong about someone in the best possible way. And that feeling is genuinely rare in animation right now. Think about how many times you've watched a cartoon and clocked the twist villain before the protagonist did. You're sitting there watching the hero trust this person, and you're already 3 steps ahead going, yeah, that's the bad guy. We know. Can we move on? And the show thinks it's surprising you, but you've just seen it too many times to be surprised anymore. Now, compare that to watching Charlotte kiss a frog for her best friend in the rain. No agenda, no setup for a later betrayal, no dramatic music hinting that something is off. Just a girl who loves her friend doing something ridiculous because it might help her. That surprised me more than Hans ever did. And I think that's the argument for this trope right there. When you overuse the twist villain, when every kind character is secretly rotten underneath, you don't just make the twist predictable. You accidentally make genuine goodness the most unexpected thing you can put on screen. You make warmth feel radical. You make a character who is just nice feel like a plot twist in themselves. Charlotte is a plot twist. Perito is a plot twist. Not because they do something shocking, but because in the landscape of modern animation, a character who is exactly who they appear to be is genuinely shocking. And the emotional payoff of that is something the actual twist villain hasn't been able to deliver in years. So, to every writer sitting in a room somewhere trying to figure out how to make their audience feel something, make the kind character stay kind. Let the sweetness be real. Let the audience spend the whole story waiting for the betrayal and then never give it to them. Because at this point, that's the most surprising thing you can do. Okay, this one is quick, but I need to say it, because it bothers me more than it probably should. You know the arrogant character, the one who walks into every room like they own it, talks down to everyone, has an attitude for no apparent reason, acts like they're the best thing to ever happen to whatever situation they're in. We've seen that character 1,000 times, and in most cartoons, that character is secretly a fraud. That's the move, right? You build up this arrogant, insufferable, full of themselves character, and then the story humbles them, pulls back the curtain, shows everybody that the confidence was a performance covering up insecurity or incompetence or cowardice. And the audience is supposed to feel satisfied watching them get taken down a peg. And look, sometimes that works. Sometimes that's the right story to tell. But can we talk about how cartoons almost never do the other version? The version where the arrogant character is arrogant because they are actually, genuinely, legitimately that good. Not a fraud, not a coward, hiding behind attitude. Just someone who is unpleasant to be around and completely backs it up every single time. Because that character is so much more interesting to me. Think about it. There's something almost fascinating about a person who has every reason to be humble, who is surrounded by people who don't like them, who gets called out constantly, who makes enemies just by existing, and they just don't care. Because they know what they bring to the table. They've done the work. The results speak for themselves. That's not insecurity. That's not a mask. That's just someone who is really good at what they do and has stopped pretending otherwise to make people comfortable. And the other characters have to reckon with that. They can't just wait for the moment where the jerk gets exposed because the exposure never comes. They have to actually deal with the fact that this person they don't like is also the person they need. That's real conflict. That's interesting. The fraudulent jerk is a story about ego getting checked, but the competent jerk is a story about whether you can separate someone's value from their personality. Whether you can work with someone you genuinely don't enjoy being around because they're that good. Whether being right all the time earns you the right to be difficult. Those are actually complicated questions. And they're questions you can only ask if the jerk is genuinely competent. The moment you make them a fraud, you've answered everything. Oh, they were just insecure. Oh, they were just scared. Mystery solved, lesson learned, everybody hugs at the end. But if they're actually good, the story stays open. The tension stays alive because nobody gets the clean resolution of watching them fail. They just have to keep figuring out how to deal with this person who is excellent and exhausting in equal measure. That's the version cartoons keep skipping over, and I want more of it. Give me the jerk who doesn't need to be humbled because they were never bluffing. Give me the character everyone finds difficult who also keeps saving the day and knows it. Give me someone whose confidence is earned and annoying and completely justified all at once. Because that character is way more fun to watch than another fraud waiting to be exposed. All right, this one. This one I need you to stay with me on because I feel like the conversation around redemption arcs has gotten really messy in recent years, and I want to try and untangle it a little bit because there are two camps right now. Camp 1 says redemption arcs are cheap. They let villains off the hook. They minimize the damage these characters caused. They're lazy writing dressed up as emotional payoff. Just kill the villain. They did bad things. End the story. Move on. Camp 2 says redemption arcs are beautiful. People can change, growth is possible. The most interesting thing you can do with a villain is show them becoming something better. Killing them is the easy way out. And both camps spend a lot of time yelling at each other online. But here's what I actually think. They're both right, and they're both wrong at the same time. Because the problem was never redemption arcs. The problem was always lazy redemption arcs. And there's a massive difference between the two that I feel like we keep collapsing into the same conversation. A lazy redemption arc is when a character does genuinely terrible things, hurts people, destroys lives, causes real damage, and then has one emotional moment where they choose the right side and suddenly everything is fine. The heroes forgive them. The narrative forgives them. The audience is supposed to forgive them. And the weight of everything they did just dissolves. Like it never happened. That's not redemption. That's an erasure. And audiences have gotten really good at clocking it. So good that now there's this reflex where anytime a villain starts showing soft edges, people immediately go, oh, here comes the redemption arc. Eye roll. Here we go again. And shows that might actually be trying to do something interesting get dismissed before they even get a chance to land it. So what did some shows decide to do? Just kill the villain instead. Skip the arc entirely. Make the choice for the audience before the conversation even starts. And I get why. I genuinely get why. It's cleaner, it's decisive, it sidesteps the criticism, but it also sidesteps the actual interesting story. Let me talk about the diamonds from Steven Universe for a second, because the diamonds are a genuinely fascinating case study in how polarizing this conversation gets. These are characters who ran a galactic empire, who caused immeasurable harm across entire worlds, who are responsible for things that cannot be undone. And the show redeems them, gives them a path forward, asks the audience to accept that they're capable of growth. And a lot of people rejected that completely. And honestly, some of those criticisms are valid. The arc moved fast. The consequences felt thin for the scale of what they'd done. It felt like the show wanted the emotional payoff of redemption without doing all the work to earn it. Then there's Belos from the Owl House. And the fandom debate around Belos is really interesting because the Owl House went the other direction entirely. Belos does not get redeemed. Belos gets ended. And a lot of people felt like that was the right call. This was a character whose damage was too deep, whose ideology was too rotten, who had been given chances and rejected every single one of them. But some people pushed back on that too and said, we just watched Steven Universe try redemption and get criticized for it. So now every show is overcorrecting and deciding that killing the villain is the brave choice, when actually it's just the safe one. And I think that second group has a point, because here's the thing. The answer to a badly executed redemption arc is not no redemption arc. The answer is a better redemption arc. And the best example I can give you, and yes, I know this is an adult animated show, but it has to be said, is BoJack Horseman. Because BoJack Horseman understood something that almost no other animated show has figured out. Redemption is not a destination. It's not a moment. It's not a scene where the character makes the right choice and the music swells and we all feel good and go home. Redemption, real redemption, is a process. That is ongoing. That is painful. That does not erase what came before it. BoJack spends the entire show trying to be better. And he makes progress, real progress. And then he falls back. And then he tries again. And the people he hurt don't all forgive him just because he's trying. Some of them can't, some of them won't. And the show doesn't tell you they're wrong for that. He has to keep living in the world that knows what he did. He has to sit across from people whose lives he damaged and not get the absolution he wants from them. He has to be better, not because it fixes anything, because it doesn't fix anything, but because it's the right thing to do, even when it costs him, and even when nobody is clapping for it. That is a redemption arc with real consequences, and it works because the narrative never lets him off the hook. The story holds him accountable, even while it holds space for his growth. Both things exist at the same time. He is trying to be better, and he still lives with what he did. Those things don't cancel each other out. They coexist. Uncomfortably, honestly. That's the middle ground that cartoons keep missing. Not villain does bad things, has a moment, gets forgiven, story over. And not villain does bad things, therefore villain must die, story over. But villain does bad things, chooses to try and be different, and then has to actually reckon with what that means in a world that remembers. A world where trying doesn't automatically equal forgiveness. A world where growth is real, but consequences are also real, and neither one cancels the other out. That is interesting. That is the story worth telling, because it reflects something true about how change actually works. It's slow. It's non-linear. It doesn't come with a clean ending, and the people you hurt get to decide for themselves whether your growth means anything to them. And both answers are valid. Cartoons that understand that are doing something genuinely rare. And I want to see more of them take that risk, because killing the villain is easy. Lazily forgiving them is also easy. But making them live with it, making the story live with it, making the audience sit in that discomfort and figure out how they feel about a character who is both genuinely trying and genuinely responsible. That takes real writing. And when it lands, it hits harder than any twist villain or clean ending ever will. So here's what all 5 of these have in common, and I want you to think about this for a second before we close out. The spoiled rich girl who is actually kind, the 2 parents who are both a little chaotic, the sweet character who never betrays you, the jerk who actually backs it up, the villain who has to live with what they did. None of these are complicated ideas. None of them require some revolutionary new approach to storytelling. They're all just familiar tropes with one thing changed, one assumption flipped, one expectation subverted. And that's kind of the whole point, because cartoons don't need to reinvent the wheel to be interesting. They don't need to throw out every familiar character type and start from scratch. What they need, what makes the difference between a show that feels fresh and a show that feels like you've seen it before, is the willingness to ask one question about every character they write. What does the audience expect this person to be? And then decide whether that expectation is worth keeping or worth breaking. Because the most memorable cartoon characters aren't always the most original concepts. Sometimes they're just familiar archetypes, handled with a little more thought, a little more care, a little more faith that the audience can handle something that doesn't fit neatly into the box they were expecting. Charlotte isn't revolutionary. She's a rich girl in a Disney movie, but the choice to make her genuinely kind and keep her that way made her one of the most beloved side characters Disney has ever created. Bandit and Chili aren't a new idea. Cartoon parents have existed forever. But the choice to make them both human and messy and funny and present without defaulting to the tired dynamic made Bluey the kind of show that parents cry watching as much as the kids do. BoJack isn't a new concept. Flawed character trying to be better. We've seen versions of that story everywhere. But the choice to refuse the easy resolution, to sit in the discomfort and let the consequences be real, made it one of the most honest pieces of animation ever made. It's always the choice. It's always that one decision in the writer's room where someone says, okay, but what if we didn't do the obvious thing here? What if we trusted the audience a little more than that? And when shows make that choice consistently, when they build a whole world out of characters who keep surprising you not because they're unpredictable, but because they're written with actual intention, that's when cartoons stop being just cartoons. That's when they become the kind of thing you think about long after the episode ends. The kind of thing you bring up in a random conversation years later. The kind of thing that makes someone say, I don't know, that show just felt different. I can't explain it, but it felt like it actually cared. It did care. That's why it felt that way. And honestly, that's all I want from every cartoon, from every show, from every character that gets put on screen. Just care a little more than the default, go one step further than the obvious choice. Ask what the audience is expecting and then decide deliberately, intentionally, whether to give it to them or not. That's it. That's the whole thing. All right, that is a wrap on this video. We went through 5 tropes today that I genuinely think animation needs more of. The spoiled sweet, 2 chaotic parents, the character who stays good, the competent jerk, and the redemption arc that actually means something. And this video, just like the last 2, Kike, came from a real conversation, from real people who love cartoons enough to have opinions about them. So, if you've made it this far, clearly you're one of those people. And I want to hear from you. What is a cartoon trope that you want to see more of? Drop it in the comments. Because at this point, you already know your comments might just become the next video. And if you're new here and you want to be part of that conversation going forward, kindly subscribe to Animated Memories. It's free. It helps the channel more than you know, and we genuinely have a good time talking about this stuff together. All right, I'll see you in the next one.